Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our October creative session. For those of you who don't know me, I am Valerie Nye, the library director here at Santa Fe Community College, and I'm really glad you're here with us tonight, whether you're returning or coming for the first time. The way we've designed this series, coming when you can, is perfect. So we're happy to have you here this evening. For those of you in Santa Fe, I hope you're enjoying the change of season. It's kind of our first cold day of the season, and I love the changing color of the light, especially in the evening when I drive home. So just enjoying all of that in our place here in Santa Fe. Tonight is a chance for us to focus on our own creative work, to write, reflect, and maybe be surprised by what you write. So we're excited to work together tonight. A quick reminder, our final Write-Gen session of the semester will be on Wednesday, November 19th at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. I will send a link out, as I have for all of these sessions, to remind you. That evening, we will turn the spotlight over to you all so you can read the things you have written this semester. And don't feel like it has to be polished. It can be polished as much as you want it to be. It could be a work in progress. We just would love to hear what you've been working on. So I will now turn things over to Austin, and he will introduce our guest writer and guide this evening. Austin.
Thanks so much, Val. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome. This creative session is brought to you by the Santa Fe Community College Library and Creative Writing Program. We're thrilled to have you join us tonight for this special event, and we hope you'll come back to celebrate the power of words and storytelling at our future events. Tonight's gathering is an invitation to those who have passion for the written word. If you've ever dreamed of becoming a writer, whether you'd like to craft compelling fiction, pen evocative poetry, or explore the world of nonfiction, SFCC is awaiting your arrival. In our program, students can earn a certificate or an associate's degree in English language creative writing. The Santa Fe Community College Creative Writing Program nurtures aspiring writers, providing them with the tools, guidance, and inspiration to take their creative endeavors to new heights. We believe that writing is not only a useful and a practical skill, but an art form that has the potential to transform lives and connect people across time and space. SFCC's creative writing program is focused on your development as a writer, a reader, and a member of a creative community. Our faculty are published authors and professional editors, and our course offerings include a multi-genre workshop and an internship with the Santa Fe Literary Review, SFCC's in-print literary journal. Related degree and certificate requirements include opportunities to intern with local magazines, newspapers, and publishing houses, to explore the world of book arts, and to hone screenwriting skills. Students work closely with professors and peers to develop, revise, and publish creative and academic writing in a range of genres and formats. Upon completion, you'll have gained the skills and experience to submit a manuscript for publication, pursue a career in editing, or continue your studies in creative writing. You can also now complete the entire program online. Please see the chat for links to our program website, where you can see our course offerings for spring 2026, explore the program requirements, find information about the Santa Fe Literary Review, and the Kate Besser Awards, SFCC's very own writing awards. For those of you considering your own creative writing journey, we encourage you to ask any questions you have about the program. Whether you're an experienced writer looking to take a single course or a complete novice ready to explore your creative potential, we have classes and resources for you. In Santa Fe Community College's creative writing program, we believe that everyone has a story and every story is worth sharing. Tell us yours. We have the honor tonight and the pleasure, of course, of welcoming back James Thomas Stevens. James Thomas Stevens is an Akwesasne Mohawk. James is the author of 8 books of poetry and a Whiting Award recipient whose work explores language, place, and Indigenous history. He teaches in IAIA's undergraduate and graduate creative writing programs. He teaches poetry, creative nonfiction, Native American literature, and literary world survey courses. He lives in Cañoncito, New Mexico. Please help me welcome James Thomas Stevens.
Thank you, Austin. Thank you, both Austin and Val, for the invitation to be a part of this, and good evening, everybody. Austin, you make writing sound so exciting. When I hear you say it, I'm like, I want to be a writer. So thank you. So tonight I wanted to focus on epigrams and epigraphs. Like, as many of you who were here last time noticed, I use quite a few of them in my work. And A lot of that's because my research or my poetry, and it's funny that I call it my research. I meant my poetry involves a lot of research, so much so that it feels like my research involves some poetry. So I do often spend, I was just chatting a little bit with Val before about how much time research can take. And even if the poem happens to be like 10 lines long, 10-line stanza, it's still informed often by like months of research. And part of doing research that I really enjoy, because I like to focus on like 18th century, sometimes 17th century texts that I'm researching, is just coming across really odd turns of phrase that would be completely strange to contemporary writers and speakers. And often they're the catalyst for what becomes a poem. But like one of them that sticks out in my mind, because I research so many specifically Native issues, Indigenous issues. I was reading something about a Native child in New England invited into the home of somebody in Worcester, Massachusetts, actually. And in the description of the child's reaction to what they called an English house, his first time in an English house, the quote was, "The poor thing knew not whether a wine glass was as strong as an iron." And it just seemed such an odd thought to me and such an odd turn of phrase, that it became one of the quotes that I used and began the poem with. So not only the odd phrasing, I mean, there was another phrase in that same book describing another child that said, "He's a curious little fellow likely to lose his mittens." And I thought, what makes somebody think that about anybody? Um, but I also liked just the wording of it and the strangeness of it. And it got me thinking about the ways that these quotes function and the different ways that I use them. And I guess there's three main things that I'll talk about with using quotes and the way that I use them. And the first one is meditation. I mentioned when I read that I went to Naropa Institute when it was still an institution, not a university. And because there was such an emphasis on Buddhist ways and of looking at things, and there was a strong emphasis on meditation that's stayed with me since then, back in the 80s. So one is just taking a quote and really meditating upon it by using it as a writing tool. The second one has to do with, I guess, reparations, and I link it with subversiveness, like ways to take things. And this one I use mainly with Native students. And at this point, I've taught three of the colleges I've taught at. Two of them have been tribal colleges, and I've used it often with other Native students. That deals with, I have them often look up or research a single historical quote, either specific to their tribe or just specific to natives in general. Some quote that's been made historically about them. And often they're surprised to find how quickly they'll come up with a quote, even about their specific tribe. And because of the time periods and because of the way colonizers saw indigenous people, they're often not nice quotes, as you can imagine. So when I say reparation and subversiveness, this exercise also gives people a chance to not only meditate on each single word in the quote, but also, if they choose, to write a poem for every single word in the quote, including like the articles and pronouns, but really think, if some quote begins with, "I feel that Native people are," they begin with the I and really think through every aspect of what is I, who is I, who's the I that gets to speak, who's the I that doesn't get to speak. But so each word in a quote will have a poem written for it. And I see it as a kind of subversive way of taking a quote, because when these poems are completed, they begin with the full quote, so people know what the full quote is, but then they get to see how it ends up after a person from that culture has worked through it and turned it into a positive instead of a negative. I teach a lot of Polish poetry this semester. I'm teaching world poetry. So right now, actually, we're on Polish poetry. And as I mentioned, I grew up in Western New York. Buffalo, New York has one of the largest Polish populations in the country. So it's a culture and a language that I grew up around. And I've always loved Polish poets. I mean, I feel like my poetry heart is mainly devoted to Polish poets. And a lot of it's because the country was so pulled at by every other, by Prussia, by Austria-Hungary, by Russia, Germany, and at times not allowed to speak their language. And I think that kind of, living through that ends up in really good poetry. And for people like Wisława Szymborska, who's one of my favorite of the Polish poets, at the time she was living, to be able to write, she had to join the official writers union in Poland and still be able to write what she wanted to say about the situation in the country around her, but do it subversively and in a way that kind of got by the editors, even though she was working as an official editor. So I think of it as reparation and subversion. The third one is just simply a filter. And this is something I mentioned with Native students when it's specifically a Native workshop, is that here's your chance. I said, think of it like a fish tank. And the quote that you have about your own people may be full of all the parts of the fish tank we don't like. But think of yourself as the filter and filter out all the negative and clarify that into something positive. So the filter is really linked with the reparation and this possible subversion. So maybe I could get it down to just meditation and the filter, creating reparation. But also I've been really surprised to see how quotes, not even that exercise I'm talking about, that's something I often do, but just I'm surprised how often whole quotes and people just meditating on the entire quote, not even taking it apart word by word, but just really meditating on it. I'm thinking of a time when I did this assignment at the University of Hawaii in Manoa, and it was just a classroom. They weren't even necessarily poetry majors. They were just students in a poetry class, some who were taking their first poetry class. Three of them, I remember, were males who were football players. And I thought, I wonder how this is going to play, because what I had been researching was I've been researching and translating the Jesuit relations. I could find the Jesuit relations from China translated, but I couldn't find the Jesuit relations from up in Canada and the area I'm from. So I had to do a lot of translation, and it was fresh in my mind. So when I got to that class, I had said, okay, I'm going to give you a quote by a Jesuit who had just found himself in China, not knowing anything about the culture or the language. And I want you to meditate on it long enough that you can see how it somehow relates to your own life. And I could see the eye rolls. I mean, they were like, aren't Jesuits priests? And I said, yeah, they are. So I said, but anybody we have things in common with and can look at metaphors in our lives. So the most pleasant surprise was one of the football players. The quote was from a Jesuit who was riding in a litter, basically. So it was an enclosed litter being carried by Chinese men. And his writing was basically a complaint saying that I know I'm in this amazing country. I've seen the mountains, yet I spend 16 hours traveling in a black box with no fresh air and the blinds drawn so we can't see anything. Um, so it was basically a very old complaint, is what they were reading. And the way that this one football player got into it was that he thought about it and then thought, oh, this is like when we play opposing teams, opposing football teams on the other islands, we have to fly to the islands. And he said it's usually at night, so it's the night before. So we're flying and we can't see anything of Hawaii and the water around us and the mountains. And he said people are always saying like, oh, that must be amazing. You get to fly between islands all the time. And he was thinking, I do, but I never see anything. You know, we're in this little tube flying above. So he wrote this decent poem. You know, he was not a writer per se, but he definitely got the exercise and was able to connect and see like, oh, it does have some bearing to my life. So he began his poem with that quote from the Jesuit preacher. So as an example, I'm going to, if I can figure out, we've had like one semester with no Zoom in my classes and going back to in person. I believe I know how to share my screen though. So let's see here. Um, okay, this problem I forgot about. How do I turn this?
On the right-hand side, there's a little
Oh,
half
okay, I see.
circle.
It's normally
Yeah,
at the top. Yeah, that's why I was confused.
there you go.
Okay, so this is an assignment from I don't know if you can see this book title, Open the Dark. It's by an Inupiaq writer, Marie Tozier, who was part of a workshop that we did up in Alaska, in Palmer, Alaska. And oops, what did I just do? She was asked, like I mentioned, to find a quote. How did I screw this up? And she found the quote fairly quickly. Oh, trying to get rid of that. It keeps popping up.
May make you sign in your IA email address. This is something we see at SFCC.
There's no way to just click on this and get it in the foreground.
No. It has to do with the license that the school has, and yeah, it always surprises me when it pops up for us. Never when you're planning.
Well, that was a lot. Okay, so the quote that she found is here. So she titled the poem, They Tried to Teach Me History. And the quote she found about her tribe, about Inupiaq people, was the parents of these Indian children are ignorant and know nothing of the value of education, made by John S. Ward, Indian agent, 1886. So you see the same words in the actual quote, the beginning, first steps, declaring what is, naming it, ugruk, bearded seal, parents, defenders, teach a child by example, by witness. Grandfather said, when a young man comes of age, he must learn to hunt. Of the Bible says, and Jesse begat David the king, and aren't we all the sons of Adam, each one? These, right here, as if it was happening today. Wait, the school teacher stands up at City Hall, begs for money to do her job, then blames the parents when she fails. Indian, Alaska Native, Hopi, Diné, Inuk, the real people. Children, not vessels. We fill them up, not understanding what's useless can't be poured out. They're drowning. Are is better than were. My brother was lost, and now he's gone. Ignorant. Ignorance, another word for why can't you do it my way? Less the guilt. And what follows after dismissal is grief, disaster, destruction, brown faces on the street, corner, middle of the winter, waiting for bars to open. No, the difference between life and death is the difference between the truth and a lie. You can't take it back, not today, not tomorrow, forever. Nothing, everything taken away, our land, our ways, our children gone, abandoned, Kadskri, sod house, returning to earth. Of, tell it to your children, and let your children tell it to their children, and their children to the next generation. Remember, the definite, specified by circumstance, unneeding of recognition or approval or equivocation. I am enough. Value. What is the fair price of happiness? Can it even be measured? Unacknowledged injustices are wounds left unhealed, left to fester, warm to the touch. Of songs unsung, hang in the air. No ears remain to claim them, make them listen. Education. Would it matter if I laid out the process for cutting seal, splitting the carcass, separating the blubber from the meat, which is dried in the wind and sun, butterflied open from tail to neck, meat hung till black, backbone hacked, intestines braided to be cleaned, water run through them, water to wash away the sin of being. So after she wrote that, she said, now I feel okay with that quote. I filtered it, she said. And it definitely had that feeling of she worked through all the things she was thinking in reaction to it. So there are two quotes that I came up with for you to choose one or the other and to approach it in whichever way you would like. If you want to do it the word by word way, like Marie did. What am I about to do here? Get rid of that. I think get rid of this, yeah. And the two quotes are actually, one is from Gertrude Stein, who I always find strangely interesting. The other one is a quote that from Maya Angelou. See if I can make that larger. So this Gertrude Stein quote, her typical wording, in the United States, there is more space where nobody is than where anybody is. And this, in her writing about the United States, one of the things that often people don't realize that is, if you've read Tommy Orange's book, There, that's from a quote by Gertrude Stein where she was talking about Oakland, California, and she said, there is no there, like when they asked her if she wanted to return. So this quote by Gertrude Stein, the other is Maya Angelou, and like I said, I feel like this is just a truth we should all think about. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. So what I'm asking or hoping that you'll write from is one of these. And like I said, look at it either just as a simple starting off point where it makes you think of a poem that is inspired by it, or if you want to work word by word, beginning with each word, including the articles, or kind of a meditation on each word. I guess when I think of myself meditating on a quote, it's usually meditating on each word that makes it up, similar to the way that some people write a poem for each word in the quote.
So our mission is to choose one of the quotes and just work on it for the next
Yeah, use
20 or so minutes.
for the
Is that
next. Yeah, that would be
okay?
good.
Okay.
And then if anybody feels like sharing anything, but if not, and there's more questions you might have, then we can open it up again.
Timer for 20 minutes then, and we'll come back together.
About 5 more minutes. Yeah, I guess if we can start wrapping it up. Okay, it is 10 minutes till. Anybody feel like sharing any part of what they wrote? I know it was a short time. But I want to give the opportunity if anybody does want to share anything. How did it feel working with somebody else's words? For anybody that wants to answer that question.
I was expecting to be much more stumped by trying to write from every single word in the quote, including the articles. And I was really shocked by how it flowed and yeah, really connected and came out just much better than what I was anticipating. That was really fascinating.
That's good to hear, because I always wonder, and that was the first time I did it, that was my question, was like, how am I going to write a poem about, or write, even thinking about the word the, how much do I have to say about the? But then in thinking about how the functions is often where that answer to that lay for me, is like, what does the, and well, I mean, you know that I rewrote a book of grammar as a poem, so I do often think about how words function anyway. So, but it was, and words like a and, you and, okay, good to hear that it came easier than you thought.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Renee, I think
Hi,
has her hand up.
Hey, Susan.
Hi.
Oh,
James,
sorry.
this was interesting. I let myself be influenced by, for example, Space, the New Frontier. But then I started arguing, like, leave me alone. I've got my own ideas. And then there was, and so that happened with the not so popular songs, and things kind of came up in my head with these words. And then I would kind of like fight back and have my own interpretation. That's never happened.
Huh, that's interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Susan. Had somebody else started saying something?
Renee, feel free to jump on in.
Hi, thanks for having me. Um, I had fun. I thought that the Gertrude Stein quote was maybe a little heavy. It like hit me a little heavy at first, and then as I started in with it, it became a little lighter. And I'll
Mhm.
read it if you're interested. It's not terribly long.
Sure. I'd love to.
Okay. Um, In. As a child holding a big secret, I longed to be in the in crowd, the laughing, open mouth people with nothing to fear except maybe being tired. The girls who knew the words to the 97.3 Kiss FM songs and had new clothes on ordinary Mondays. United, they were bonded and bouncy all together and all together. States, even in our little known state, they deciphered social codes I didn't even know were ciphers. There, there they go again. Is it my turn yet? More. Can I have some too? Space. I'm small. I'll fit, and you won't even know I'm there. Where? Nowhere. Nobody. That's me. Is not. Then, hey, I'm smart too, only not the same kind of smart as you. Compare and despair, then and than, where and where. Anybody can learn to do your type of trick. Is, I have given up hope of ever having had a better childhood. What happened then is part of me now.
Wow. I really like how hearing the personal connection works. I mean, I was thinking of the Gertrude Stein quote in its entirety the whole time you were reading that, and I really liked how they play together. And the fact that like you paced it in different places, how you kind of jump through the is, then, where, and group those together was a really nice break in spacing too. Cool.
That was
Good
fun.
job.
I could share.
Anybody else? Okay.
Yes. So I took the Maya Angelou quote, and immediately there became a question mark at the end of the quote. So it was no longer a statement, it was a question. And then what I wrote was, met for the first time, a would-be friend, lover, a would-be awkward, unpleasant, not like the rosebuds expected in summer's start, uncertain, questioning, doubts, fears, consequences. Hope will work out and not hurt before, and not hurt like before, like rejection felt in my heart aching, breaking, maybe would one day be warm, cozy, sense of belonging, friendship, connection, brothers. Give it a chance. Give it time to reveal. Maybe, maybe, maybe.
Beautiful. I like the silence toward the end too, that you gave it that space. So you looked at it more as a meditation on the entire quote?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
I think one of the things I was thinking about when you all were writing is I like other ways of using quotes. The other night when I read, I was originally going to read from a poem about music, and the poem about music not only has a lot of quotes from ethnomusicologists in it, and like Claude Lévi-Strauss and some other people, but it has the letters between Mozart and his father, which I was going to suggest is another really interesting thing to do, is to look at historical correspondences, and think about how, I mean, it's an odd thing to do too. I was going to say, think about how to insert yourself into it, but it is doing that. Like I was in the poem about music, kind of using the letters between Leopold and Wolfgang and just absorbing them into what I was writing, because they were saying similar things. They were talking about missing each other, and I'll just read you a really short little part where, and I'm not going to say where the quote begins, because when I read these poems and use quotes, I don't say typically quote unquote or quote who it's by, because I don't want the interruption, but I'll use my fingers to say, let you know where the quote begins. So it's from a letter from the father, from Leopold to Wolfgang, but it's embedded in what I wrote here. Where you are my reference to the music, and I cannot hear you play. Irreference is workable and a useful tool, and I cannot know what I have missed away from our garden, behind walls. They are yours. And you can easily imagine that it is a species of martyrdom to me to know that he has composed much during all this time, while I unhappily can hear nothing of that which was once my chiefest delight. A species of martyrdom to misunderstand what it is you feel sleeping, my hand against your mouth. It is rhythm amplified against the thick skin of scars, a drum stretched tighter across the years. The river below sounds the leitmotif of union, there as a frame to hold these notes together. So I use their letters back and forth, but just weave them in this long poem, which is written to a partner who was a classical musician and who looked at native music as kind of barbaric and basic, and never really said those things, but it was made made clear. And that answer, that poem was using, the countryman's letters of the partner to make my point, like from a native perspective, but there's just so many ways to use quotes, and I hope this was useful in thinking about some of them, but it's one of my favorite things to do. And like I said, especially just because of the time periods things are written, the wording can be so different from anything we would ever say, and really beautiful in its own turn, and inspirational. But thank you for showing up to the workshop and for trying your hand at it. When I wanted to ask you, Val, when is the final, like when people will read some of the poems they wrote in the mini
It is
session?
going to be November
Thanks.
19th. So on a
Okay,
Wednesday. It's a Wednesday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So, and I'll send out an announcement
okay, so
to
it's,
everyone. So yeah, I hope you will
okay,
join us for that. And thank you so much for
I
this.
will.
This has been a totally different direction than any of our writers have taken this on, and is so inspiring. It really opens up a whole world of thinking and exploration that I'm excited to explore. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, James. And everybody, before we go, I just want to remind everybody that the Santa Fe Literary Review is still accepting submissions until November 1st. You can go to our website, which is listed in the chat up at the top. I think it's the creative writing website, so you'll need to find the Santa Fe Literary Review website. You can also just Google Santa Fe Literary Review and it will pop up for you, but we're still taking submissions. We would love to see your work. And even if I don't see it there, I will see you next month so that we can all have a reading together. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
I,